The morning light spilled gently across the quiet town, painting the streets with a soft golden hue. The kind of morning where even the hum of a car engine felt peaceful, where the world seemed to pause for a brief moment. Officer James adjusted his uniform and stepped out onto the familiar sidewalk, breathing in the crisp, early air. Birds chirped lazily, their songs weaving through the stillness. James liked these quiet walks before the day's work began. There was a rhythm to it, a calmness that reminded him why he had chosen this line of work. He smiled faintly, nodding to a neighbor watering her garden. Everything felt ordinary. Then, a faint, almost hesitant sound reached him. A whimper. A small, soft, almost broken sound. He froze, scanning the hedges lining the street. There it was. A tiny puppy, barely more than a few months old, huddled behind a low hedge. Its fur was matted with dirt, and one paw seemed awkwardly angled. The puppy lifted its head slowly, ears twitching, eyes wide and cautiously aware. For a moment, it did not move. And yet, it was as if it knew James was not a threat. He knelt slowly on the cool pavement, careful not to startle it. "Hey there, it's okay," he murmured. His voice was soft, gentle. The puppy tilted its head, small eyes meeting his. There was something in that gaze, something unspoken, almost knowing. James extended a hand, letting the puppy sniff him. Its tiny nose pressed gently against his fingers. Then, with deliberate caution, the little dog inched forward, as though testing whether it could trust him. When it finally rested against his chest, a tiny sigh escaped its lips, a sound so delicate, it tugged at James's heart. He could feel it, the fragility, the quiet courage. Every little movement seemed purposeful, deliberate. The puppy wasn't frantic or panicked, it was aware, intentional, as if sensing something beyond the hedge, beyond the street, beyond the ordinary morning. James brushed his hand lightly over its damp fur. "You've had a rough night, huh, little guy?" He smiled faintly, trying to mask the lump in his throat. There was a softness in the air, a quiet suspense, as though the world itself had slowed to watch this encounter. The puppy's ears perked suddenly, its head turning ever so slightly to the left. James followed its gaze but saw nothing unusual. Yet the dog remained rigid for a few moments, alert, focused, as if it had caught a signal only it could understand. It was strange, magical, almost. A tiny heart beating fast with awareness, yet wrapped in complete trust. James lifted the puppy carefully, cradling it against his chest. He felt warmth, the faint tremble of life so fragile, and yet so alive. A soft breeze ruffled the puppy's fur, carrying the faint scent of earth and morning dew. The world smelled alive, warm, and strangely hopeful. James adjusted his hold, feeling an unexpected surge of protectiveness, an instinct he didn't quite recognize in himself until this very moment. He glanced down at the puppy's wide, alert eyes. There was purpose there, intent. Something it wanted him to see, or understand, something beyond pain or need. And in that instant, James realized that this wasn't just about rescuing a stray dog. There was a story here, a quiet story that had been waiting to unfold. As he carried the puppy toward his patrol car, each step was deliberate, gentle, as though he and the little creature were moving through the morning in perfect harmony. The town remained silent, golden light stretching across the rooftops, painting long, soft shadows. The puppy nestled closer, its head resting just above James's heart. Its breathing was steady now, calm, but its eyes never left his face. And then, for a heartbeat, it stiffened, tiny muscles taut, ears pricked, gaze fixed, unblinking. What the puppy sensed would change everything. James paused for a moment, letting the words settle in his mind. He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know why the puppy reacted this way, only that there was a depth to it, something profound hidden behind those small, trusting eyes. The morning continued around them, gentle and unassuming. But for James, for the puppy, nothing would ever be the same. A quiet anticipation lingered in the air. The kind that promises warmth, connection, and an extraordinary story waiting to be discovered. Before James even reached the car, he felt a soft nudge, a reminder that sometimes, the smallest creatures carry the biggest mysteries, and that some bonds are formed not through words, but through quiet trust, intuition, and the language of the heart. The patrol car hummed softly as James drove through the quiet streets, the puppy nestled against the passenger seat. The sunlight streamed through the windshield, casting warm, golden patterns across the dashboard. The little dog's fur glimmered in the soft light, and its small chest rose and fell with steady breaths. James glanced over, noticing something subtle. The puppy's ears twitched ever so slightly, its head tilting as if listening to sounds beyond human perception. He frowned, curious. "What are you hearing, buddy?" he murmured. The puppy gave no answer, only a small, deliberate shift in its position. At the vet's office, the fluorescent lights were soft this morning, and the receptionist's gentle smile made the place feel calm. James carried the puppy inside, the little creature still alert, observing every detail. It wasn't scared, it was aware, focused, connected. As the vet approached, the puppy stiffened again, ears pricking forward. Its gaze locked on a corner of the room, where a faint shadow stretched across the floor. James followed its eyes but saw nothing unusual. And yet, the puppy remained rigid for several heartbeats, sniffing the air cautiously, tilting its head in a way that seemed purposeful, as if trying to communicate something invisible. Dr. Ellis knelt down, smiling softly. "Well, what do we have here?" "You're a tiny one." She reached to examine the puppy, and James noticed how it moved subtly away from certain angles, then leaned into others, almost as if it knew which areas were safe and which weren't. "It's remarkable," James whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's like, it can sense things I can't." The puppy wagged its tail just slightly, not in play, but as a quiet acknowledgement. Its movements were deliberate, intentional, gentle but clear. James felt a shiver of wonder run through him. How could such a tiny creature hold so much awareness? They took a seat in a quiet room while Dr. Ellis ran routine checks. The puppy remained still, ears alert, eyes scanning the small office. When James reached to pet it, the dog leaned forward just enough, nuzzling his hand in trust. Then, suddenly, it shifted its attention to a small, closed cabinet in the corner. Its tiny body stiffened again. James raised an eyebrow. "You want me to open that?" The puppy's gaze never wavered. Slowly, he opened the cabinet. Inside were neatly stacked charts, medicine bottles, and a small first aid kit. The puppy sniffed the air, then settled back into James's lap, tail wagging faintly. Dr. Ellis chuckled softly. "Well, it seems like someone has quite the sense of awareness, maybe even a little detective work." James laughed quietly, but inside, he felt a warmth spread through him. This wasn't ordinary behavior, it was intuition. Gentle, unspoken, and deeply meaningful. The puppy seemed to understand its surroundings in a way that went beyond instinct. Through the day, James noticed other small signs. When they walked outside for a short break, the puppy would pause at certain sidewalks, tilting its head, sniffing, sometimes nudging James toward objects or spots he wouldn't have thought twice about. Once, it pawed at a small discarded bag on the curb, staring at it intently. James bent down and realized it contained a torn blanket, probably used by someone homeless or lost. It wasn't just curiosity, it was understanding. Purpose. Connection. Even in quiet moments, like when James poured a small bowl of water for it in the vet's office, the puppy would sit and watch him, almost evaluating, not demanding, not pleading, simply observing. And in return, James found himself changing too. His own senses felt sharper. He started noticing tiny details in the room, small cues he might have overlooked before. By late afternoon, as the sunlight softened again, the vet completed her checks. "Nothing major," she said, smiling. "Just a few scrapes and bruises. Tiny body, big awareness. This little one is going to heal quickly, physically. Emotionally? I think you two have already begun that journey." James nodded, holding the puppy close. He felt a quiet bond forming, one built on trust, intuition, and shared understanding. Every glance, every tilt of the head, every subtle paw movement carried meaning. The puppy's eyes met his again, wide and unblinking. There was something unspoken, a gentle insistence that they were connected for a reason. James didn't know what that reason was yet, but he felt it. They stepped outside into the late golden light, the streets bathed in warmth. The puppy sniffed the air once, ears flicking toward a distant alley. James felt a tug of curiosity, but also a deep sense of peace. The world was quiet, safe, yet full of subtle messages only the puppy could perceive. For a long moment, they stood together, the sun warming their backs. The puppy leaned into his chest, eyes scanning, listening, sensing. James breathed slowly, letting the stillness settle around them. This small creature had a way of seeing the world that was gentle, intuitive, almost magical. And James realized that in saving the puppy, he hadn't just rescued a fragile life. He had found a companion, a guide, a mystery waiting to be gently unraveled. And quietly, he whispered, almost to himself, "Whatever you're sensing, I want to understand it, buddy. I promise." The puppy tilted its head slightly, as if acknowledging the promise. Its gaze drifted for a moment, focusing on nothing in particular, yet everything all at once. There was a soft pause in the air, a silent understanding between human and dog. And James knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The warmth of the late afternoon wrapped around them, golden and soft, carrying the quiet promise of a story that would touch hearts, unravel mysteries, and deepen a bond that was already beginning. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through James's kitchen window, painting the room in warm amber streaks. The coffee machine gurgled quietly, steam curling into the air like lazy ribbons. The puppy sat on the rug nearby, small paws tucked neatly under its body, ears flicking with every tiny sound, the soft clink of the spoon against the mug, the distant hum of traffic outside, even the faint creak of the floorboards. James poured himself a cup and sat at the table, glancing down at the little creature. "You've got me curious, buddy," he said softly. The puppy tilted its head, watching him intently, as if it understood the weight of his words. There was a strange wisdom in its gaze, calm, deliberate, and unspoken. Over the next few days, James began noticing patterns in the puppy's behavior. It wasn't random. The little dog seemed to respond to subtle cues, sounds, scents, even shifts in human expression. Once, while walking through the park, the puppy paused suddenly by a patch of grass near a bench. Its ears perked, eyes sharp and focused. James looked around, expecting a stray piece of trash or a squirrel. But there was nothing visible. Yet the puppy remained rigid, sniffing, tilting its head, pawing at the ground lightly. Curiosity tugged at him. "What are you sensing, little guy?" James whispered. The puppy leaned gently against his leg, as if to reassure him it wasn't urgent, only significant. Back home, the pattern repeated in subtle ways. The puppy would nudge James towards certain rooms, watch intently when objects were moved, and sometimes sit quietly, head cocked, ears alert, focusing on spots where no one else noticed anything. James couldn't explain it. He began observing carefully, jotting small notes in a notebook, paw taps, ear twitches, gaze fixed, subtle sniffing. Each action felt purposeful, deliberate, and meaningful. One afternoon, as James folded laundry, the puppy suddenly barked softly, just a single, quiet bark. He looked up, startled, and noticed the puppy staring at the corner where the sunlight hit the floor in a particular way. Following its gaze, he saw a faint shadow cast by a slightly lifted floorboard. He knelt down and gently pressed it aside, revealing a tiny envelope tucked in the corner. Inside was a small, handwritten note, forgotten by a neighbor perhaps, detailing a lost pet. The puppy wagged its tail faintly, eyes glimmering with satisfaction. James chuckled, awestruck. You found this?" he murmured. The bond felt deeper than ever. Later, at the vet's office, the puppy's instincts became more apparent. It would subtly guide James towards certain rooms, linger near particular equipment, and respond to gestures or tones with astonishing accuracy. Dr. Ellis raised an eyebrow one morning. "It's almost like it knows more than we do," she said, smiling. James nodded silently, watching the dog gently nudge him away from a tray of instruments as if saying, "Not safe, not yet." James began to talk to the puppy as if it could understand everything, because, somehow, he felt it did. "You're more than just a survivor, aren't you?" he murmured during one quiet evening, the golden light spilling across the living room. The puppy rested its head on his knee, eyes steady, calm, connected. Even small, everyday moments carried meaning. When James poured a glass of water, the puppy would step aside, letting him do it first, then lean in at the exact moment to drink, always careful, deliberate, aware. When James walked past the windows at sunrise, the puppy would pause at the sill, nose twitching at scents carried on the wind, tail low, alert. Every action reinforced a subtle understanding. The puppy wasn't just reacting to its environment, it was interpreting it, guiding James gently, helping him see the world through its intuitive eyes. James found himself changing too. He moved slower, noticed more, listened more. He observed the small details, the way a neighbor smiled but carried worry in her eyes, the subtle unevenness in a tree's bark, the faint smell of something lost in the wind. And through it all, the puppy remained by his side, a quiet teacher, a gentle guide. At night, as James settled into bed, the puppy curled up at the foot, ears flicking softly, eyes half closed. The golden streetlights outside cast soft lines across the floor, warming the room. James ran his fingers lightly over its fur, feeling the steady rhythm of its breathing. "You're teaching me patience," he whispered, voice barely above a breath. "And maybe, you're teaching me to notice the little things that matter." The puppy shifted slightly, almost like a small nod of agreement, its eyes reflecting quiet trust. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore. James realized the puppy was guiding him toward a deeper understanding, a sense of awareness, of presence, of gentle attention to the world around him. Each paw step, each tilt of the head, each soft glance held intention, a story waiting to unfold. And as he drifted off to sleep, James felt it clearly, this tiny creature, fragile yet purposeful, had brought warmth, wonder, and quiet mystery into his life. The day's ordinary routines now carried meaning, a gentle promise of discovery and connection yet to come. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the puppy was waiting for the right moment to reveal its truth. And he trusted it would be beautiful. The afternoon sun streamed through the living room windows, filling James's house with a soft, golden glow. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams of light, catching his attention for a moment before he returned it to the tiny figure at his feet. The puppy was curled up on a blanket, eyes half closed but alert, ears twitching at the faintest sounds, a distant car, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of leaves outside. James knelt beside the blanket, brushing his fingers gently through the puppy's soft fur. "You've grown comfortable, haven't you?" he murmured. The puppy leaned into his hand, resting its head briefly before lifting its gaze to meet his. There was something unspoken in that look, a quiet understanding, a subtle trust that had deepened over days of shared routines. Their mornings were spent walking along the quiet streets, the puppy occasionally pausing to tilt its head toward an object, a sound, or a scent, guiding James to notice the small details he might otherwise overlook. By now, he had learned to follow its lead, trusting the tiny creature's intuition with a confidence that surprised him. One afternoon, as they sat in the park, James noticed the puppy nudge a discarded ball toward him. He picked it up, smiling, and threw it gently across the grass. The puppy chased it with quiet enthusiasm, its movements graceful and purposeful. When it returned, tail wagging softly, it dropped the ball at his feet and pressed against his leg. There was no frantic energy, no urgency, only a calm, deliberate joy in sharing the moment. As days passed, small rituals began to form between them. Mornings were for walks and observation. Afternoons for quiet companionship, reading or watching the world pass by from the living room window. Evenings were for gentle grooming, feeding, and long stretches of just sitting together, letting the warmth of presence fill the space. Each moment, no matter how ordinary, carried the weight of trust, of connection, of shared understanding. James found himself speaking aloud more often. "You're teaching me patience, little one, and maybe a little humility too." The puppy would lift its head, ears alert, as if listening to every word, its dark eyes reflecting calm awareness. And in those moments, James felt seen not just by the puppy, but by the world itself. The ordinary had become extraordinary. One rainy afternoon, James sat by the window, watching droplets slide down the glass. The puppy rested against his chest, tiny warmth pressing into him. It nudged his hand gently when he hesitated to reach for the book he had picked up. Its small gestures, subtle and intentional, reminded him to be present, to notice the rhythm of life around him. In return, James responded in ways that deepened the bond further. He spoke softly when the puppy nudged, petted it with deliberate care, adjusted his movements to match its comfort. A quiet dance of trust formed between them, a rhythm of give and take, awareness and attention, understanding without words. Even during mundane chores, the connection held. The puppy would sit near him as he folded laundry, sniff the air attentively while he prepared meals, or follow his shadow silently as he moved through the house. And when James paused to watch it, marveling at its subtle awareness, he felt a warmth that filled every corner of his heart. The bond deepened further one evening when James found himself sharing a memory he hadn't spoken aloud in years, a childhood story about a lost dog he had loved, the grief he had carried quietly, and the hope he had almost forgotten. As he spoke softly, the puppy lifted its head, eyes focused, ears pricked, as if absorbing every word. It pressed gently against him when he finished, nudging his hand, and for the first time, James felt a quiet release, a sense of healing in their shared presence. It was in these moments, unremarkable to the outside world but profound to them, that James realized the depth of their connection. The puppy wasn't just a companion, it was a bridge. A reminder that trust, intuition, and love could manifest in the smallest gestures, a paw, a nudge, a quiet gaze. The evening light softened, painting the walls in muted gold. The puppy yawned, curling closer against James's chest. He ran a hand along its back, feeling the steady rhythm of its breathing, and whispered, "You're more than a dog, little one, you're a teacher, a guide, and a friend." For a moment, the room was still. The world outside continued on its quiet path, but inside, there was only warmth, presence, and the subtle magic of understanding. James could feel the puppy's intuition guiding him in ways he didn't yet fully comprehend, but trusted implicitly. And as night fell, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting long, gentle shadows, James realized that their bond had already transformed him. He was slower to anger, quicker to notice beauty, more aware of life's small miracles. And the puppy, ever alert, ever gentle, had become the quiet center of this new rhythm. The ordinary had become extraordinary. The mundane had become meaningful. And the warmth of connection wrapped around them both like a soft, golden blanket, quiet, profound, and deeply emotional. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly through the vet's office windows, creating a warm glow that seemed to settle over the quiet room. James carried the puppy gently inside, feeling its tiny body pressed against his chest. The little creature's eyes scanned the room, ears flicking at the faint hum of machines and the soft shuffle of staff moving about. Its movements were calm but purposeful, as if it already knew what awaited them. Dr. Ellis greeted them with a gentle smile. "Good morning, you two. Ready for a checkup?" she said softly. The puppy wagged its tail faintly, and James set it down carefully on the examination table. Its body stiffened just slightly, alert, aware, focused. As Dr. Ellis examined the puppy, she paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. "This little one has remarkable instincts," she said quietly. "Not just physically, but emotionally. There's something in the way it reacts to its surroundings, the awareness, the subtle guidance toward or away from certain things. It's unusual." James leaned closer, curious. "Unusual how?" he asked. The puppy lifted its head, ears pricking, as if sensing the conversation. Its eyes met his for a heartbeat, steady, calm, intentional. "Well," Dr. Ellis continued, "some animals have heightened intuition, but this is different. The way it notices patterns, reacts to certain stimuli, it's almost as if it's trying to communicate a story without words." She paused, brushing her fingers lightly over the puppy's scruffy fur. "It's rare. And beautiful." James felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of wonder and awe. He had noticed the subtle cues for days, how the puppy guided him toward objects, paused at certain spots, responded to unspoken emotions, but hearing it confirmed by the vet made the connection feel even more profound. Over the next few days, small clues began to emerge. The puppy would nudge James toward certain areas in the park or at home. Once, it pawed at a small box tucked behind a chair, revealing a torn photograph of a family. Another time, it led him to a quiet corner in the vet's office where an old, forgotten first aid kit sat on a low shelf. Each discovery was subtle, tender, and meaningful, nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just intentional. One afternoon, James and the puppy walked along a tree-lined street, the golden light filtering through leaves, casting soft patterns across the pavement. The puppy suddenly paused, ears alert, gaze fixed on a small wooden fence. It pawed gently at a crack in the wood. Curious, James bent down and peered through the gap. Inside the backyard, he saw a neglected garden, overgrown but alive with small signs of life: a bird's nest tucked in a bush, a sprouting flower, a faint trail of paw prints. The puppy wagged its tail faintly and looked up at James. Its expression was calm but insistent, almost as if saying, "See this. Notice it. Understand it." James smiled softly, marveling at the gentle way this tiny creature was guiding him. Back at home, the pattern continued. The puppy nudged, tilted its head, watched intently, and occasionally paused in deep focus. James began to notice how it responded to emotions, too. When he felt frustrated or distracted, it would rest a paw lightly on his leg, or nuzzle his hand, redirecting his attention, not demanding, just suggesting presence. When he was happy, it mirrored his energy subtly, tail wagging, eyes bright, sharing the quiet joy. It became clear to James that the puppy was more than a companion; it was a teacher, a subtle guide helping him tune into the world in a new way. And every day, he felt the bond grow stronger, warmer, more unspoken and profound. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting a soft golden haze across the living room, James sat quietly with the puppy curled in his lap. He held a small notebook, filled with observations, paw gestures, head tilts, nudges, attentive moments. He realized that each small action carried meaning. The puppy wasn't just reacting, it was revealing a story, gently, carefully, one clue at a time. James spoke softly, almost in awe. "You're showing me something, little one, something I can't yet fully understand. But I feel it. I trust you." The puppy lifted its head, ears alert, eyes locking with his. For a heartbeat, it felt as though a bridge had formed between their thoughts, a silent promise that whatever the truth was, they would uncover it together. Dr. Ellis called later that week with subtle confirmation. "You're right," she said, her voice warm. "There's something extraordinary about this puppy. I've never seen such deliberate, gentle guidance before. Keep observing, you'll understand more than you think." James hung up, feeling a quiet thrill of anticipation. The puppy rested its head against his knee, tail flicking softly. Its presence was steady, reassuring, and profound. That night, as the house grew dark and the streets outside settled into stillness, James sat by the window, the puppy curled beside him. Golden streetlights spilled warmth across the floor, illuminating the subtle rise and fall of its tiny chest. Every subtle movement, the flick of an ear, the shift of a paw, the tilt of its head, felt deliberate, meaningful. "What are you guiding me toward?" James whispered, voice barely above the hush of the night. The puppy blinked slowly, gaze steady, calm, connected. And in that moment, James realized, the gentle reveals weren't just about discovery. They were about connection, trust, and the quiet understanding that some truths emerge slowly, layer by layer, guided by heart, intuition, and presence. The room was still, soft with golden shadows and warm anticipation. James leaned back, feeling the steady rhythm of the puppy's breathing, letting the mystery settle around them. There was no rush. No danger. Only gentle revelation, quiet guidance, and the promise that what they were uncovering together would be beautiful. "What the puppy senses is leading us somewhere extraordinary," he murmured softly, as the night deepened and their bond grew ever stronger. The morning light seeped softly through the living room blinds, casting long, warm streaks across the floor. James sipped his coffee slowly, eyes following the little figure curled on the rug. The puppy's ears twitched faintly at every distant sound, the soft clatter of dishes, the hum of a passing car, even the faint rustle of leaves outside. It was calm but alert, aware of everything and nothing all at once. James set his cup down and crouched beside it. "You've been leading me for days," he murmured. "And I feel, something's about to change." The puppy tilted its head, eyes steady, as if acknowledging the weight of his words. They decided to take a walk to the park, the air crisp with early morning freshness. Sunlight filtered through the branches, dappling the path in soft gold. The puppy led the way with subtle guidance, sniffing, pausing, and occasionally nudging James toward spots that seemed ordinary but were anything but. Halfway down the trail, the puppy stopped abruptly near a large oak tree. Its body stiffened, gaze fixed on the base of the trunk. James approached carefully, curious, and noticed a small, worn journal tucked behind some roots. He picked it up gently, brushing off the dirt, and opened it. The pages were filled with notes, sketches of a little dog, and a young girl's handwriting. James felt his chest tighten. Each word, each drawing, was alive with emotion. It was as if the puppy had led him to something forgotten, something that carried a story waiting to be acknowledged. He glanced down at the puppy. Its eyes met his with a quiet, knowing intensity. Tail wagging ever so slightly, ears pricked, it seemed to say, "See this. Understand it. Feel it." Over the next hour, James read through the journal. It spoke of a little girl who had lost her dog months ago, describing moments of laughter, comfort, and companionship that had left a void in her life. The sketches were detailed, tender, capturing small gestures, playful habits, and the unmistakable bond between child and pet. James's eyes softened, heart tugging with empathy. He realized the puppy hadn't just guided him randomly. It had sensed the lingering presence of love, loss, and longing. And now, quietly, it was helping him bridge that gap. The turning point came later that evening, back at the house. James held the puppy in his arms, rocking gently. "You've been guiding me, not just through streets and parks, but to understanding something much bigger, haven't you?" The puppy rested its head against his chest, breathing calm and steady, ears alert but relaxed. It was in the small gestures, the tilt of the head, the gentle nudge, the quiet observation, that the puppy revealed its purpose. It wasn't just intuition, it was empathy in action. And James felt it deeply, a rush of warmth that seemed to fill every corner of his being. That night, he sat by the window with the puppy at his side, golden streetlight spilling warmth across the floor. Memories of his own childhood pets surfaced, tender and bittersweet. The little dog pressed closer, almost as if sharing the weight of understanding. James ran his fingers over its fur, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath. "You've changed me," he whispered. "And maybe, you've been leading me to help someone else too." The puppy's eyes blinked slowly, gaze fixed and knowing. It was a quiet acknowledgement, a shared understanding that words could never fully capture. The emotional turning point was subtle but profound. James realized that the puppy's actions were not just clever behavior, they were guided by purpose, empathy, and connection. Every small discovery, every gentle nudge, every pause had been leading him toward an emotional truth, that love, understanding, and healing often came in quiet, unseen gestures. Later, as he prepared for bed, James reflected on the day. The puppy had led him to the journal, revealed the story of a lost bond, and silently guided him to empathy he hadn't fully felt in years. It was extraordinary, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply moving. He whispered softly as he tucked the puppy into its small bed beside his own. "You're remarkable, and I think I understand now. You've been showing me that the smallest actions can carry the biggest meanings." The puppy blinked slowly, ears twitching gently, settling down with a content sigh. For James, everything had shifted. He was no longer just observing, he was participating in a quiet, meaningful journey guided by a tiny creature whose awareness and heart had opened his own. The puppy's intuition had led to revelation, and the emotional weight of that realization filled the room with warmth and soft, golden light. And as the night deepened, the city quieted, and the stars appeared beyond the window, James realized the bond had reached a new depth, one of understanding, empathy, and shared purpose. The journey was far from over, but the path had been illuminated by gentle guidance, love, and the subtle brilliance of a little dog whose actions carried meaning beyond measure. He held the puppy close, whispering once more, "Whatever you sensed, whatever story you've been trying to tell, we're discovering it together." And in that moment, the air felt heavier with promise, yet lighter with warmth. A quiet truth lingered between them, one that would soon unfold in ways James had never imagined. The morning sun filtered through the curtains in soft, honeyed beams. James sat at the kitchen table, the puppy nestled beside his coffee mug, its tiny paws tucked neatly beneath it. The world outside seemed ordinary, birds chirping, the distant hum of traffic, but inside, the quiet warmth of the home carried a weight of anticipation. Over the past few days, James had followed every subtle nudge, every paw tap, every head tilt. Each small clue the puppy had revealed seemed to build towards something greater. And now, the feeling had grown undeniable. Something important was about to be discovered. It began with a simple walk to the park. The late morning sun slanted through the trees, casting long, golden shadows along the paths. The puppy led James to a familiar spot beneath a large oak tree, ears pricked, tail low but steady. It paused, pawing lightly at the base of the trunk. James bent down, noticing something he had overlooked before: a small bundle of worn blankets tucked under the roots. Carefully, he lifted the blankets and found a small crate, inside which lay letters and photographs. Each item was faded, worn with age, but the emotions they carried were vivid. Photographs of a little girl laughing with a dog, scribbled notes about shared adventures, memories of quiet companionship. James's breath caught in his throat. The puppy nudged his leg gently, eyes wide, ears alert. It was as if it were saying, "See. Understand. Remember." He sifted through the papers slowly, absorbing the story. The little girl had lost her dog months ago, a companion who had been her shadow, her confidant, her comfort. Grief had lingered quietly in the house and garden, unnoticed by most. And now, through subtle signs, the puppy had led him to uncover it. Dr. Ellis arrived later, drawn by a message from James. She knelt beside the crate, her eyes soft with understanding. This is remarkable," she whispered. "It's as if the puppy knew where to guide you, leading you gently to the heart of the story." James looked down at the tiny creature resting in his arms, its head tilted slightly, gaze fixed on him. The realization hit him like sunlight breaking through clouds. This little dog wasn't just intuitive, it had purpose. It had been waiting for someone to notice, someone to act, someone to honor the memory of love and loss intertwined in this quiet story. He carefully placed the photographs and letters into a folder, handling each piece as if it were the most precious treasure. The puppy pressed against him lightly, tail wagging ever so slightly. Its gaze, steady and warm, conveyed trust, reassurance, and pride. That evening, James visited the family who had lost their dog. The little girl, now slightly older, opened the door, her eyes widening as James handed her the carefully collected photographs and letters. Tears glimmered, soft and gentle, as she flipped through the memories. The puppy sat quietly beside James, observing. Its ears flicked at every gasp of recognition, every whispered memory. And when the little girl finally knelt to hug the small dog in James's arms, the puppy responded with gentle nudges, its warmth radiating empathy and understanding. "Thank you. I can't believe you found these," she whispered softly, voice trembling. James smiled quietly. "I couldn't have done it alone," he said, glancing down at the puppy. "This little one guided me every step of the way." The truth revealed itself slowly but powerfully. The puppy had been a bridge between loss and healing, intuition and understanding, memory and present connection. Every small, deliberate action had led to this moment of shared recognition and emotional release. As James left their home later that evening, the golden glow of sunset spilling over the rooftops, he felt the profound weight of what had unfolded. The puppy trotted beside him, ears alert, tail relaxed, gaze soft yet purposeful. They had not just discovered a story, they had facilitated healing, restored connection, and honored a bond that might have been forgotten. Back at home, James reflected on the journey. He knelt beside the puppy, brushing its soft fur and feeling the warmth of its tiny body pressed against his chest. "You've done more than guide me, you've changed lives," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. The puppy blinked slowly, a gentle acknowledgement, almost as if understanding the magnitude of what had been accomplished. That night, as they sat together by the window, the stars emerging softly in the sky, James felt a quiet sense of completion. But it wasn't the kind that ended abruptly, it was a soft, lasting warmth. The journey had revealed the heart of the puppy's intuition, the depth of its purpose, and the extraordinary connection it shared with him and the little girl. The room was still, filled with golden shadows and quiet reflection. James ran his fingers along the puppy's back, feeling the steady rhythm of its heartbeat, and whispered one final thought. Your story, little one, your guidance, it's more beautiful than I ever imagined." And the puppy, curled up gently against him, seemed to agree, ears flicking softly, eyes half closed, radiating calm awareness and quiet joy. The truth had been revealed. And in its wake came warmth, healing, and the undeniable proof that even the smallest beings could carry extraordinary meaning. The sun rose gently over the quiet town, casting soft golden light across rooftops and streets. James sat on the porch with the puppy curled against his chest, ears twitching at the faint sounds of morning, the distant chirp of birds, the soft rustle of leaves, the hum of a car passing by. The world felt calm, ordinary, yet imbued with a subtle, lingering magic. The past few days had been extraordinary. The puppy had led him through moments of curiosity, discovery, and emotional revelation. And now, after revealing the little girl's memories and facilitating a quiet reunion with her lost bond, everything felt lighter, warmer, whole. James shifted slightly, letting the puppy stretch lazily on his lap. "We've done good, haven't we?" he murmured softly. The puppy lifted its head, dark eyes steady, tail wagging faintly, as if affirming his words. The bond between them had grown in ways James had never anticipated. It was no longer simply about care or companionship. It was about trust, empathy, and shared purpose. Every paw step, every tilt of the head, every subtle nudge had been a thread in a tapestry of understanding that connected them both to something larger than themselves. Later that morning, James decided to visit the park one final time with the puppy. Sunlight filtered through the branches, warming their path. The puppy paused at familiar spots, beneath the oak tree, near the small garden, beside the tiny bench. Each pause seemed deliberate, reflective, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had taken together. James knelt to brush a stray leaf off the puppy's back, smiling softly. "You've been guiding me all along, and now I think I understand." It wasn't just about finding memories, it was about healing hearts. The puppy leaned into his hand, resting its head briefly, calm and content. They returned home as afternoon stretched across the town. Warm light filled the living room, illuminating the soft rise and fall of the puppy's chest as it curled up beside James on the couch. The golden hue painted gentle shadows across the walls, creating a serene, cinematic atmosphere. James reflected on everything: the subtle nudges, the head tilts, the tiny paw taps, the moments of quiet observation. Each had been purposeful, intuitive, and deeply meaningful. He realized that the puppy had taught him patience, empathy, and the profound impact of small, deliberate actions. The little dog wasn't just a companion. It was a guide, a teacher, and a source of quiet, transformative love. And in its own gentle way, it had led him toward emotional closure, not just for the little girl who had lost her dog, but for James himself, who had silently carried the weight of old memories and unspoken regrets. As evening approached, James stood by the window, the puppy resting at his feet. Golden light shifted to soft amber, and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky. He whispered, "Thank you, for everything. For showing me how to notice, how to care, how to truly see." The puppy lifted its head, ears twitching, eyes reflecting a calm intelligence, a quiet understanding. Dinner passed quietly. James watched the puppy eat, small tail wagging faintly. He smiled softly, thinking about the journey they had shared, from the first whimper behind the hedge, to the gentle guidance, to the full revelation of purpose. Every moment had led to this feeling, a deep, satisfying warmth, a sense of wholeness that filled the room. Later, as night settled, James carried the puppy to the porch one last time. The sky was deep navy, dotted with stars. The air was cool but gentle, carrying faint scents of the town at rest. The puppy curled against his chest, ears flicking faintly at the distant sounds, breathing steady and calm. James leaned back, letting the warmth of the puppy press against him. "We found something special, haven't we?" he murmured. The puppy blinked slowly, as if in agreement. In that quiet moment, James realized the full truth: this story, this journey, wasn't just about discovery. It was about connection. About healing. About love expressed through small, intentional gestures that might have seemed ordinary but were profoundly extraordinary in their impact. The puppy had brought more than guidance, it had brought closure, warmth, and a renewed sense of wonder in life's smallest details. And James knew that while the journey had reached a gentle ending, the bond they shared would continue, ever present, ever meaningful, quietly transforming every day they spent together. He pressed his forehead gently to the puppy's soft fur, whispering, "Thank you for trusting me, and for letting me trust you." The puppy sighed softly, curling closer, a tiny heartbeat of reassurance, calm, and love. And as the stars glimmered overhead, James felt the warmth of the journey settle around them like a soft, golden blanket. The subtle mystery, the gentle guidance, the heart-touching truth, they were complete. Life had returned to quiet rhythm, but it was richer now. Every sound, every scent, every small movement carried meaning. The world felt warmer, softer, and infinitely more connected. And through it all, the little puppy remained small, wise, intuitive, and profoundly loving, a silent reminder that the smallest hearts often hold the greatest truths, and that connection, empathy, and gentle guidance can heal more than just bodies, they can heal souls. James whispered once more, softly, almost to himself. The truth behind your actions was more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. The puppy blinked slowly, ears twitching softly, resting against him as the night wrapped around them, golden and calm. The journey was over, yet the warmth lingered, a quiet, eternal reminder of love, trust, and the magic of small, purposeful hearts.